tri-state tornado outbreak of 1925 was one of the most devastating natural disasters in United States history. It took place on March 18, 1925, and is remembered as the deadliest tornado outbreak ever recorded. This event spanned multiple states in the Midwest and southern United States, including Missouri, Illinois, and Indiana. The tornadoes that formed during this outbreak caused unimaginable destruction, taking the lives of over 750 people and injuring more than 2,200 others. On that fateful day, at least 12 major tornadoes were confirmed across the region. The most infamous of these was the tri-state tornado, which carved a path of destruction that was 219 miles long, making it the longest tornado track ever recorded. This deadly tornado ripped through Missouri, Illinois, and Indiana, leaving behind unimaginable devastation. It was the deadliest tornado in the history of the United States and the second deadliest tornado in world history. The tri-state tornado outbreak left entire towns flattened, lives shattered, and communities reeling from the massive destruction. With no modern warning systems in place at the time, many were caught completely off guard by the powerful storms. This tornado outbreak stands as a reminder of the terrifying power of nature and the severe impact it can have on people's lives. It also became a defining moment in meteorological history, as researchers would later look back to better understand the factors that led to such a catastrophic event. In the years since, meteorologists have studied the outbreak to try and piece together how such a deadly series of tornadoes formed and why it caused so much devastation. Though this tornado event occurred almost 100 years ago, its memory still lingers in the regions affected and serves as a stark reminder of the force and unpredictability of nature. The conditions leading up to the tri-state tornado outbreak of 1925 were ideal for the formation of violent storms. During the early part of March, an unusually warm and moist air mass moved up from the Gulf of Mexico, colliding with a cold, dry air mass from Canada. This clash of air masses created an unstable atmosphere over the Midwest and southern United States. On March 18, 1925, these ingredients came together to form an intense low-pressure system that would spawn a series of deadly tornadoes. The first signs of trouble appeared in the early afternoon when thunderstorms began developing over southeastern Missouri. The atmosphere was so unstable that these storms quickly turned severe. By 1 o'clock in the afternoon, the first tornadoes had touched down near the town of Ellington, Missouri. Within minutes, the storm strengthened, and what would become the deadliest tornado in U.S. history began its nearly 3.5-hour journey across 3 states. The tornado first tore through Missouri, destroying farms, homes, and small towns in its path. By the time it crossed the Mississippi River into Illinois, it had already killed hundreds of people and leveled several communities. The powerful winds of the tornado ripped buildings off their foundations, uprooted trees, and tossed debris for miles. In some places, the damage was so severe that entire towns were unrecognizable. As the day wore on, the tornado continued its relentless march across southern Illinois and into Indiana. With each passing minute, the death toll climbed higher, and the destruction grew more widespread. People had little to no warning before the tornado hit, as there were no modern forecasting systems like radar or storm sirens. In many cases, residents didn't realize they were in danger until the tornado was already upon them. The lack of warning and the sheer size of the tornado contributed to the massive loss of life and property. By the end of the day, the tri-state tornado had left a path of destruction over 200 miles long, with winds estimated to be over 300 miles per hour at its peak. The storm had also triggered several other smaller tornadoes across the region, adding to the overall devastation. The tri-state tornado's impact on the cities it passed through was catastrophic. In Illinois, the town of Murfreesboro was hit especially hard. With a population of about 12,000 at the time, the tornado destroyed nearly everything in its path. The storm struck at approximately 2:30 in the afternoon, leveling schools, homes, and businesses. Entire blocks were reduced to rubble, and over 200 people lost their lives in Murfreesboro alone, making it the single deadliest town affected by the tornado. The damage left behind was so extreme that it took months for rescue crews to fully sift through the debris and begin rebuilding. West Frankfort, another town in Illinois, was also devastated by the tornado. Here, many coal miners who had just returned from their shifts were caught by surprise as the tornado ripped through their community. The storm left behind a staggering death toll of over 150 people in West Frankfort, and entire neighborhoods were wiped off the map. Survivors recalled the terrifying roar of the storm and the chaos that followed as those who escaped with their lives tried to locate their families and neighbors amid the destruction. In Indiana, the town of Griffin was also in the tornado's path, suffering significant damage. Though the population was much smaller than the Illinois towns, the storm still managed to take lives and destroy countless homes. The aftermath left survivors struggling to find shelter, food, and medical help in the midst of overwhelming devastation. Aside from the towns themselves, the tornado caused widespread damage to farmland, transportation infrastructure, and utilities. Crops were flattened, livestock killed, and miles of railroad tracks torn up. Telephone and telegraph lines were downed, cutting off communication with the outside world. Roads became impassable due to debris, leaving many isolated for days until rescue crews could reach them. The immediate aftermath of the tornado was marked by confusion, chaos, and fear. Communities banded together to search for survivors and to care for the injured, but the scale of the disaster made recovery slow and difficult. The aftermath of the tri-state tornado left entire regions in shock. With thousands of homes destroyed and over 600 lives lost, the survivors faced an overwhelming task of rebuilding. Many were left homeless with few possessions and had to rely on makeshift shelters in churches, schools, and other buildings that remained standing. Emergency response was slow, as communication lines were cut and roads were blocked by debris, further complicating rescue efforts. Hospitals and clinics in the affected areas were quickly overwhelmed with the number of injured people. Local doctors, nurses, and volunteers worked tirelessly to treat wounds, but supplies ran low within days. In some cases, makeshift hospitals were set up to handle the influx of patients. Medical teams from nearby cities eventually arrived, bringing much-needed assistance and resources to treat the injured and provide care for those affected. Relief efforts were further hindered by the damage to infrastructure. Roads, bridges, and railroads were destroyed, making it difficult for supplies and rescue teams to reach the worst-hit areas. It took several days before aid could arrive from surrounding states, and even longer for organized relief efforts to be put into place. The American Red Cross and other organizations mobilized, sending volunteers, food, clothing, and medical supplies to help the thousands of displaced families. Rebuilding communities took years. For many survivors, the psychological toll was as significant as the physical destruction. Families who lost loved ones struggled to cope with the grief and trauma of the event. Entire towns had to be reconstructed, and it took immense effort from both local residents and outside aid to restore some sense of normalcy. In many cases, entire neighborhoods were unrecognizable, and the process of rebuilding homes and businesses was slow and laborious. The tri-state tornado's destruction also led to changes in disaster response and preparedness. Local governments began to reevaluate their emergency response plans, emphasizing the need for better communication systems and quicker access to medical and relief supplies. While the tornado's path of destruction could not have been predicted, the disaster prompted discussions about how to be better prepared for future natural disasters. The legacy of the tri-state tornado remains deeply etched in the history of the Midwest. The disaster, which struck on March 18, 1925, reshaped the lives of thousands and left a lasting impact on the communities affected. The sheer scale of the devastation, along with the unprecedented number of casualties, made the tornado a pivotal event in the region's history. In the years that followed, the tri-state tornado became a significant case study for meteorologists and emergency responders. Efforts to understand the factors that led to such a powerful and long-lasting tornado spurred advancements in meteorology. While the technology of the time could not predict tornadoes, the devastation underscored the need for better forecasting methods and storm warning systems. In the decades that followed, scientists and meteorologists worked toward developing systems that could give people more time to prepare and seek shelter. Beyond the scientific advancements, the disaster also fostered a sense of resilience and community among the survivors. Towns that had been leveled by the storm gradually rebuilt, and the stories of survival, bravery, and solidarity became part of the local lore. Despite the overwhelming destruction, people came together to rebuild homes, schools, businesses, and their lives. The experience also highlighted the importance of neighborly support and the collective spirit of recovery as communities leaned on each other to move forward. Today, the tri-state tornado is remembered not just for the destruction it caused, but also for the lessons it provided in preparedness, response, and recovery. Monuments and memorials stand in several of the affected towns, honoring the lives lost and reminding future generations of the storm's profound impact. The disaster also serves as a sobering reminder of the power of nature and the importance of continued advancements in weather forecasting and disaster management. The tri-state tornado remains one of the deadliest and most destructive tornadoes in American history. Its aftermath led to improved systems for emergency response and laid the groundwork for modern tornado warnings, leaving a lasting mark not only on those who experienced it firsthand, but on the entire field of disaster preparedness.